in real quick so we can talk about that real quick.
I'll be over here.
You want to come right there to the left? Hey, this is Keith. Welcome to How to Build Your Own Home. This is live chat. I want to go over a couple of things real quick. We want to talk about a little bit of the market and how things are changing a little bit. This is going to be kind of important. Then we can go in. I want to talk about how to deal with stress. I have a matrix that might help people out that. I've heard a lot of comments on that. And then we'll start talking and taking some questions for you. Let's talk about the market. One thing that has shifted, and it shifted yesterday, in fact, was the price per barrel of oil, of crude oil. When that goes down, that typically affects a lot of your lumber costs because of the transportation costs, and it affects the price of lumber. So it's finally gone down. It was actually going up for 3 or 4 weeks straight, and it had a dip for a while in the middle of the summer, but it was going on a screaming tear, and it's at $86 a barrel. It's now starting to go down, and that typically happens in the end of the year, in the fall time, and it does affect your lumber prices. In fact, that one thing affects your lumber more than anything else, aside from inflation and other things. So you're going to see lumber kind of either stay flat for a few months or dip a little bit, but I don't see it going up very much from here on out until next year begins. So that's a real plus what's happening in the market. And that's why I love breaking ground in the fall. Right now, from 2 weeks ago to the next, I would say 8 weeks to possibly longer, depending upon where you are in the country. It's the best time to break ground is in the fall. Get yourself shelled up, protected before the Christmas time. Any thoughts you have on the market, sweetie?
I know. Just waiting. Well, as soon as those interest rates go down, which could be next month, but it'll be a gradual probably, but people are saying they could drop to 4.5% in the spring. So I don't know. I know there's a few people that are saying not, but all the people that I've talked to that are no lending and stuff like that, they are expecting that drop.
Do you think it will drop this year or more so next year?
So with the Buffini Mastermind, they said that it should drop the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. I did a quick search on a lot of sites before I came on, and there were some saying that by the end of the year or near the fourth quarter, the end of like December even, there should be a drop in interest rates. But we'll see.
We don't have a crystal ball, but that's what they're saying.
So if you, again, check on your lending, and if you've got a construction loan, ask if they have that. There's an option in there to see if you can actually change your interest rate during the course of construction. So if those interest rates do come down, you want to try to lock that new price in. So right now, your price of materials are lower than they were a year and a half ago. So that's your big plus. You're going into the fall, lower the costs for energy to transport things. And the other big plus right now is that it's a slow build season right now. There's very little building going on right now. People are pulling back, slowing down, shutting down, holding back. They're being a lot more conservative. And so I get calls all the time about subcontractors. One of my framers is looking for work right now. So whereas I was probably paying him $14 to $12 a square foot, he'll probably do work right now for around 10 or even 9. I don't like to browbeat people, but that is now also in your favor. And I think that's across the board in a lot of places. If I'm in one of the top 5 places for construction in the country, and it's one of the top 5 places to retire, and I'm getting people calling me for work, that just is kind of a canary in the coal mine of what it's like in other areas of the market, right?
Yeah.
So I'm getting a lot of those calls. So just a quick market update. I wanted to go over something here with you that I've created, and it has to do with the hardest thing in the construction industry is knowing who to trust and how to trust people. And I've created something, and I've never really put it into practice. And one day I'll put it into a technology. But it's a matrix that has, and I'll give you the link on this where you can get this matrix. And you'll see on the right-hand side here, there are genuine qualities. And on the left-hand side, there's basically not so genuine or political or people that are you really can't get a beat on. And there's ways to kind of read people to get a feel for who they are and where they are. And I wanted to give 3 examples of this that might help. And all this is available. This whole matrix is in the first book I wrote called The Political Optimist, which was really kind of a thick read. It got some good reviews on Amazon, but then I simplified it into this book here called 3 People to Hire and the 3 People to Fire. And this matrix is in this book. So it's on Amazon. So if you really want to read people that's got a different approach in the business world, that's a great book. But I wanted to give you an example here, and it has to do with the concept of discussion. Okay. If you're approaching a subcontractor and you want to talk about something, if they play down your objections, you got a problem. But if they listen to your objections, or if they encourage objections, well, if you don't like that, you really should think about something else. And I can give you some other opportunities for that. That's a quality that wants to add value. That's a quality that wants to listen to you. But if they ignore your objections, or if they play down your objections, that's a big telltale sign that it may not be the person you want to deal with. Again, you're looking for a quality of character and not for the bid price. You're not looking for the lowest bid on everything. You're looking for the best person you can work with. And you are now hiring people. And the biggest problem owner builders make is they hire the bid, but not the person behind the bid. You've got to learn to hire the person behind the bid, because that's going to make all the difference. Okay. I could tell you a story that happened to me today, but I won't. Maybe I'll save it for another day, because somebody called me and wanted to know something, and I was pretty straight up with them. And they said, "Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. That makes my job much easier on where I need to go." I'll just leave it at that. All right. Another one is agency. Do they recognize your voice? Do they recognize your thoughts? Do they ask questions, or do they just kind of ignore that? If they just ignore who you are, that's also something you want to avoid. Now, there's the other side of the equation. I got an email. I get 10, 15 emails a day, and I got an email from somebody, and they hadn't purchased any of my classes, any of my courses at all. And I didn't know that until I got to the end of all of their questions. They were asking me all these questions, real minutia type stuff. And I said, I finally had to say to that student, I think you should just take this First Steps course. It'll answer all the questions you're answering here. And so I don't have to spend my time typing and answering all those questions. And it's not that I was brushing them off. It's just that they didn't take the time to really study it out. And a lot of times subcontractors get very impatient because owner builders are asking 1,000 questions. And a lot of times those questions can be answered with just a little bit of common sense. Or, for example, a lot of owner builders want to know, steps on something, and what should you do? Like I've had owner builders really stop the build process because they don't understand something, and then by stopping it, restarting it is a real pain, because you have to think in terms of it's called mobility. A lot of subcontractors are putting into their clause a mobilization fee, meaning that they're going to charge you a certain amount of money up front. It's called a mobilization. And if you have some people arrive to your job site, but it's not ready for you, but it's ready for them, but you're not ready yet, and you tell them to come back another day, you just cut a whole day's payoff of these people. And I've seen that happen a lot. And it's all because they're too afraid. One of the biggest issues is drywall. Oh, I don't want to close up the walls. I want to make sure I get something else done, or whatever, something done. And that's where you slow things down. And so you want to talk with subcontractors and ask them you want to find out how comfortable you are with them and how comfortable they are with you. And if you're a stop and jerk and stop and start person, there's not going to be a lot of subcontractors that are going to want to work with you. If you aren't really planned and thinking ahead and forward thinking and really okay with because sometimes things happen on a job site and it happens fast and things get done real quick for a day or two. And then you get scared and then you say, you don't know what to do next because things are happening so fast. Well, you have to be comfortable with that. The other thing you have to be comfortable with is sometimes there's a mess. If you go into some really, really good kitchens, and I worked in a lot of great kitchens in a busy time of the night, it's 7:30, there's a lot of people eating, and there can be some mess here and there. And you could walk in there and say, oh, this is a terrible kitchen. No, this is just at the peak of doing a lot of work. And that can also bother people. And if you're not accustomed to the way things really happen on a job site, and the way things should happen on a job site, you can get bent out of shape, and it can really throw your subcontractors out, just really frustrate them. And if you're sending them emails and texting them, kind of like, there's that movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Remember that movie?
Yep.
And he says, well, what were you doing? Well, I was calling him every day and I was texting him every day and he never called me back, that kind of thing. If you're constantly questioning them and constantly asking them questions, keep that really at a minimum, because that can really, really cause a lot of problems with a lot of subcontractors. If you really don't need to know the answer, you don't need to know the answer. What you need to know is when it will get done and how well, and that it will get done the right way. That's all you need to get done. But a lot of owner builders get involved in the process. Well, how do you do that? Why do you do that way? And all that kind of stuff. You have to be comfortable with the person you've hired and let them perform, let them do the best they can. If you obviously see the product is not the right thing, that's a different story. But these are just some things I wanted to get. I will put a link for this. It's pretty expansive. It's a 36-point scale, numerical scale. Here's another one. Leadership. All right. If they see leadership as a person do they serve others, do they encourage others, or do they just have a lively attitude? Now, I've hired lively attitudes to my dismay. People that I really liked, and he's a great guy, he's a nice guy, and they make you feel good. And it's some of the stories I've been through, but just hiring people I liked, but they really weren't serving other people. They really weren't encouraging you, and they really weren't a sponsor for what you're trying to achieve. They were just fun-loving people, but their work product was really, really terrible. So consider these books. Take a look at the Matrix. I'm going to give a link to it so you can actually download it yourself and just take a look at it, study it out, learn personality profiles. A lot of businesses, and this is something good for owner builders to consider, a lot of businesses have their own internal personality test, right? A lot of businesses just have a personality test, and it helps them gauge people. It helps them understand people. So you might want to consider creating a simple 3 questionnaire or something for a personality test for the people you're going to hire. The more confident you are with people you've hired, the more relaxed you're going to be with the whole process. So I just wanted to give those little tidbits.
Like getting referrals from people. I say do more research. I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk. He says, slow to hire, quick to fire. So if you do all your research and find referrals and stuff up front on your subcontractors, and then just hopefully, you've done your due diligence in finding the right person, then trust them in their profession and what they do and appreciate them for their knowledge. It will go a long way.
Right. And when you meet them on a job site, you can say, I just have 3 questions. I'm looking for a framer, I'm looking for a concrete guy, and here's my 3. If you got some time and you ask those 3 questions, but don't have 15. I mean, that's a lack of confidence on your part. Don't overburden people. I just got an email last night, 9 questions, and they were long paragraph questions. And I finally just said, I'm sorry, go to my site. I'll answer all my questions in my courses. I didn't mean to be rude. It's just that sometimes we can be overly Inspector Gadget on things and overly because we're not familiar, and you have to be just relax. And I'm telling you, if you don't relax during this, the end of the process is going to be super stressful. And it doesn't need to be stressful because that stress is something we co-created. It's something we bring into it ourselves. And for example, if framers leave and it's like 5 o'clock and they left for the day and it's kind of lumbers all over the place, if you get all bent out of shape, yet the quality's just great and everything's square and plumb, you got to relax because this is how some things happen on the job site. I had some people on a job site doing something down just a couple blocks away, and they're smoking on a job site. And I said, no, not inside here, you guys. Just please do it in your trucks. I appreciate it. It gets in the clothes, and it's not that great to get out of it. And I was nice to him, but I didn't get all bent out of shape. I was kind of infuriated inside, but I didn't load that on them. That's what I'm saying.
And I just remember our first build because we were both educators and we kind of jumped into it, and we did our due diligence and found good subs. And at night after we were done with work, we would go clean the site, and the subs appreciated when we came back. But it wasn't like, oh, they made it a mess. No, that was our contribution to make it nice.
And we put all the lumber in a little pile, a little smaller than 2 feet long. We put in a pile. We just kind of kept it out of the way.
And we brought the kids, make it a family event. We bought pizza. Okay, we're going to the house. We're going to clean up and make things nice, so that there's a fun way. And this is such a big learning experience when you include your family in it.
Yeah, so it's just some things I can't begin to tell you how important that is, because you're a leader, and a boss doesn't come to a job site and yak at people right off the bat, right? I remember working for a builder a long time ago, and I spent 9 hours fixing problems, cleaning the site, power washing things, cleaning windows, scraping off stuff. The minute he came to the site, he just criticized everything left and right. Well, I left him real quick. I wasn't going to waste my time with that type of person. So if the first thing out of your mouth is criticism, you're going to have a problem with your subcontractors. You're going to co-create stress and anxiety in that relationship.
They're not going to want to come to the job site.
Yeah, they're not going to want to come to the job site. I know a sweet lady who's building a home right now. She's just super sweet with everybody. And believe it or not, she's got some great people working for her because she's so sweet and she's kind and generous. I'm not saying that you won't get taken advantage of by some people who abuse that situation, but with a matrix and with asking the right questions, you can find genuine people that really do want to help you out. And don't feel like you're not going to find them. You just have to know what to look for, but you have to know what your value base is. And if you know what your value is, then you can find it in other people. And value is fruit. It bears fruit. You see it in people's actions. You don't see it in their words. You see it in how they perform. So look at the fruit that they do and what up. Testimonials, references from other people, all big stuff. Okay. I could talk some other stuff, but I didn't want to do. I got a lot of questions here. Let's jump to some questions here. First one is Chance Renstrom. Hi, Keith. Getting ready to break ground here in Phoenix. Great. What are your thoughts? That's a great time to break ground in Phoenix. How about the weather's going to be great for a few months for you? What are your thoughts on spray foam, the roof deck, and sealing the attic versus venting the attic and blowing insulation over the ceiling? It depends on how much distance you have with the top sheet of the roof with the top plate of the wall on the inside. So if your wall is right here and you've got maybe a 2x4 distance here, which is 3.5 inches thick, that's the weak spot right there. But if you put a truss and you're getting some truss design and they put a heel in that truss and your sheet is up higher, and this is the top plate of your exterior wall, and you've got some good distance here, I put some bats in there, not bats, but they're vent bats, and you staple them to the underside there and get some ventilation in there. You're going to want some ventilation in that attic. I'm not a fan of spray foam. The movement of air is going to cool off that attic. It's still going to get hot in there. You can't stop that. But if you can keep air movement in there, you shouldn't have any problems at all. You do have your monsoons that come through there. You do have humidity for about a month and a half, and that ventilation is going to be awesome. During the beginning of the fall, parts of the spring, it's going to also help out. And then you're going to be just as insulated inside because you're going to have 19, 24 inches of blow-in attic insulation on the top there. So I haven't bought into the spray foam insulation. There's some things about it that I just don't like. It's not really fireproof. When it catches fire, it's black smoke. It's everywhere. And once that gets everywhere, it's toast. If you've got a problem, you can't get rid of it. You got to peel it and scrape it off. And then if you got some leak in the roof, you can't see it. And that could be forever and it'd be rotting and you can't see the underside of your roof. So I just insulate the top of my ceiling wall, just like here, that ceiling up there. I just insulate above that, 18, 24 inches, and I'm good. I don't need to get any more ridiculous. Sorry, I could talk forever about that, but I haven't bought into the spray foam yet. Just haven't bought into it. Rick Sherman says, it doesn't seem you have enough time starting in the fall.
Depends on where you live.
It depends on where you live. I'm in a desert climate, Phoenix. He has about another 3 more weeks than I do for build time. I build in the high mountains, and I build as high as 6,000 to 9,000, 10,000 feet. I got 3 months to build. I got a race. So I know both. It's pretty insane. But if you time it right, you're fine. My framer is telling me the radiant barrier OSB will affect cell service. It could. That's actually kind of like a Faraday cage. It's actually infiltrating that. I haven't had any complaints on it, and we do a lot of that down here. A lot of builders do the radiant barrier underneath the OSB because we're so hot that a little bit of radiant barrier is refracting heat back into the atmosphere. And in our heat, it's a plus. So I haven't seen any problems with that because a lot of homes with stucco have wire mesh on them, and that could be almost very close to a Faraday cage in a way. So I haven't seen any problems with it. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen any problems with it. I've got aluminum shingle roof on my house.
Yeah.
And it's full with really thick gauge stuff. So, and we don't have any problem with cell service. So,
Rob.
Hi, Keith. I may need to hire help, maybe even friends to assist on site for my house build. What types of insurances do you recommend for an owner builder to others who would be insured? I've been in contact with my insurance agent. He's now able to sell insurance across the country. He's in Arizona, by the way, and he also has an office up in the northern part of Utah where I'm at. And he also services Nevada, but he can service the nation, across the nation. I think I've already added his information. If you're in the self-managed package, you can go to the download section and go to engineers, architects, services, etc. You can download that single page, and he's at the bottom of that. And you can actually contact him and just mention you found his name from Keith Gall. She knows, already got approval to send referrals his way. But he knows, he gives talks to general contractors on licensing, insurance, liability requirements, state requirements, and he does it across the West. He's very good at it. He knows his industry and he knows construction. So it's taken me a while to find someone like that, but he's a reference. He's available for all of those in the self-managed package. Just go to the download section. You'll see that section there. Let's see here. Let's see. SM Build says, nowadays it seems PEX is used in new construction inside the walls. Do you think is it okay for stub out as well? Is it rigid enough for fixtures? No, it's not rigid enough for fixtures, which is why when they stub it out, especially for showers and toilets, there's a hard fixture behind that where it's welded. There's still some copper welding that's taking place in the plumbing industry, and it's your exit points. Typically around toilets, sometimes they use a shark bite, sometimes they'll use a crimp, and they'll crimp it on there. But when it comes to the bathtubs and even the showers, that's going to be a weld pinch connection are right there. So, yeah, even with your exterior stubs, your hose bibs, those are going to go in, 12 inches into the wall. And keep in mind, a hose bib has to go inside a wall that goes inside a wall. So if you have an exterior wall and you have another wall coming up to it like a T like that, that hose bib has to come all the way into both of those, because it turns on and off the water from inside where it's conditioned and warm during the winter. So the PEX comes right up to the part here, but the rest of it's all rigid pipe. So Ricky says, can concrete sit exposed over the winter? No, I wouldn't recommend it, especially if it's finished concrete, like basement and foundation. You can put a sealer on it. All up north where I was building, immediately after it was poured, within 3 days, we put a sealer on that. That soaks it up, and I'd like to put 3 coats on there, but it's only good for 3 to 7 years. A good sealer, that would be very helpful. Or you just go ahead and throw some tarps down, help it out with the winter. You just don't want water getting below that 1/4 inch of what's called butter. And there's some deep, thick aggregate. If you've got concrete that's poured that's got 3-inch aggregate in there, even 2-inch aggregate, it's possible that you could get some water that gets underneath a rock and it will freeze and bust that rock out, and you'll start getting spalling. And I've seen spalling that will take out a finished job, not a broom finish, but a finished job on a home pretty quick. So I wouldn't risk it too much, especially if you pour it too late and that concrete's not going to dry for a long time. And if that concrete freezes and it's still wet inside, then you got a problem too. So you don't want to risk that unless you can cover it or put a nice concrete sealer on there. Daniel says, hello, do you have to ground a rebar concrete slab? Yes, you do. And they'll do that inside the footing, and they'll take a 20-foot stick of rebar, probably number 4 rebar, and it will come up right where the meter panel or meter box is going to be. And they'll connect that with what's called an acorn. And there's going to be a little box on the side of the wall, on the exterior of the wall. And the inspector is going to have to see that and look at it into the framing. And then some other power companies, because electricity's got some problems in a lot of areas, they're going to ask another ground 8 feet away. In our Dixie Power, which is where I do a lot of work with, they have 2 grounding rods, one inside the foundation and one 8 feet away outside the foundation. Kind of nuts, but they're getting a little overkill with that. Benjamin asks, we are building in South Carolina. I've got a lot of people building in North and South Carolina, aren't there?
Yeah, we still have to do our map. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah,
I did get the map. I just
yeah.
haven't pinned where everybody's
We
at.
need to do a pin on that. So
one step at a time.
Can you recommend budget-friendly windows, or do you have any wisdom on how to choose? Thanks. Here's a couple of thoughts on that. Okay. I bought some windows for this house from Home Depot. I forget the name of it, but when they arrived, they were the most well-packaged windows I've ever seen. They were completely encased in foam. They were actually some of the best windows. I'll have to get the name of them, but they were kind of a regional brand. You're going to find windows that are manufactured across the country. One of the reasons for that is because transportation of windows is very costly. A lot of them break and you've got problems. So you're going to find more and more plants all over the place with windows. I like to buy windows that come protected. For example, Pella windows aren't very well protected, and those flanges get chipped. And if it's in the cold weather and they set those windows down, and if they're really, really heavy, they set them down, that flange gets bent or cracked or snapped in half, and then you got a window that you have no way to fix it. I've seen Andersen windows that are the same way. So I'm kind of the guy that looks for windows that are well protected and they're easy to install and ready to install, and they don't incur any damage up until that installation date. And I don't like to give references or whatever, but go into the window department at Home Depot and you'll see during the fall, there's a lot of discounts. Get these at 15% off, get these at 10% off, and check them out. if I find the name of that, I'll put it in the description. I need to go look at my old invoice because I can't see the brand on the windows. But vinyl windows are pretty much the standard. I don't put aluminum windows or even aluminum clad on my homes because I don't like the cold wicking inside the home. So I do straight up vinyl windows, except for Pioneer homes I'm restoring. I'm going to do a wood clad vinyl. So it'll be a wood stain finish on the inside. Then it'll have a color clad or vinyl on the outside. It could be red or green or white or something like that. That's the only thing I go outside for. We'll have to come back for a replay, but thanks for doing these. Great. Okay. Have you ever encountered, this is from John, have you ever encountered a situation with an over excavated footer? What was your solution? Yeah, over excavated footer, meaning they've dug it too wide or they dug it too deep. And the reason why they dug it too wide is because that's the only size bucket they had on their backhoe. And so whenever I talk with excavators, I go, can you do my footings? And they say, yeah. Do you have a 9-inch bucket or do you have a 16-inch bucket? And if your soil has got a lot of boulders in it, okay, like 6-inch to 8-inch boulders, I typically like a smaller bucket because if I go with a bigger bucket, they're going to tear out a much wider footing, and that's going to cause me to have more concrete. So I like to get a smaller bucket, a 9-inch bucket. That way, when I do my footings, I can stay closer to that 18-inch footing, not have to get it up to a 24 or a 2-foot or even a 3-foot footing if I don't need to. So your soils tell you a lot if you watch your soil, because if you're digging same with sand, oh my goodness. Here's a good piece of advice. If you're digging in sand or it's just really sandy, but you've got the compaction, I just did a garage up north and I got a 98 compaction test on sand. And the geotech says, I don't know how you did this, but you did it. And he tested it in 3 spots. And I told him it's because I keep it wet 24/7. And then as soon as we passed the compaction test, we kept it wet still. And I told the owners, just keep it wet until that excavator comes to dig your footings. As soon as he digs the footings, he's got to pour the next day. And you poured the next day, and they were able to save a lot of concrete. But sand, if you're in a beach, when it's wet, it can form, it can compact, it can do its thing. The minute it dries out, guess what happens? It starts to cave in and slough off. So if you're in sand or even large boulders like that, you can start to rip into that dirt, and you're gonna have some problems there. So I go with a smaller bucket, and that's probably why you have over excavated footings. Is the excavator had too large of a bucket? So
is there anything that you can do, or are you just stuck with it then?
You'd have to refill it back up, recompact it, make sure you don't put the boulders back in, and then dig it again. But that's just a lot of labor. So you're probably just stuck with a larger footing. And sometimes on homes of like 2,000 square feet, if it's got sloughing or it's got aggregate that's fallen away that you had to get away and that requires more concrete as a result, you're only looking at probably between a yard and a half to maybe 2.5 yards on the high end, maybe as low as a half a yard on the low end, depending upon the soils. So it's not something to stress about. It's something to think about and be aware of. And so by writing these things down, and I have that in the course, the How to Build Your Own Home course, the self-management, when you get to footings, there's a little line item in there that says, make sure your excavator is using the right size bucket. So that question, Ryan asks, I know it's hard to say because every region is different, but do you know what a slab on grade foundation would cost per square foot, including labor? I just had one done, bid out, and it was 32 by, I think it's 24 by 32, and it came in around 31,000. I've had it as low as 28,000, and you can figure out the square footage on that. But that there is with a 32-inch frost depth. So I build in the desert, and so I don't have a frost depth. I have an 18-inch footing, about that wide, and my footings only go down about 6 inches. And then we put a slab really on top of that. But up north, I've got to go down 36 inches for frost depth. So if you have a frost depth issue, it's going to increase your cost on your slab on grade. And then you start weighing the difference. Should I do slab or should I do a stem wall? And I wrestle with that often, a lot of the times. And to me, it's what my geology tells me. If I've got soil issues that require, for example, I did a home up north and I did a lot of videos on this, but I had massive boulders. I mean, everywhere. It was a nightmare. That's a nice boulder everywhere. And so when we dug the trench, we ran into some really nasty situations. So we actually did a stem wall with CMU blocks, and then we capped over the whole thing with a slab on grade. So we got the frost depth we needed, but we avoided the nightmare of the trenching, like I talked about previously, by not having to trench so deep, because we just put a CMU block wall on top of the footing, and that became our stem wall. We controlled our costs in concrete quite a bit, and we squished the CMU right into the wet footing. Just put it right in there, and it was a solid foundation. So my inspector was happy to see that. We missed rebar in a couple of other areas, but he says, because you put it in a wet porous on a cold joint, I'm happy, because all that concrete just squished up inside that CMU block wall, and it was great. Daniel asks, flat land versus sloped land. What do you recommend? Flat. Flat. Especially if it's, I don't like land that is sloping away from the street and to the point where the house is below the center line of the street. That's a recipe for a disaster, because it's possible that flooding from the natural civic or whatever public area could come into your property. I like to have my house higher than my street. That's my number one thing. And if I'm on flat land, I can actually, if I have a basement I'm putting in there, I take all that dirt out and I lift it up and I lift the home up and I have a slope towards the street. So I like to have my homes higher than most builders, because I've seen all kinds of nightmares. So flat land doesn't scare me. It's the sloped and the excessive sloping, especially into the property towards the home where you have drainage hitting the home. I want water away from my home. And if I'm on flat area, I can control that by setting the house at the proper elevation.
So Ricky is saying Missouri. He was the one that asked a question about the concrete over winter.
Okay, Missouri.
He's in Missouri.
Yeah, you've got some snow. And so you need to find out what your frost depth is. Okay. You also have humidity issues, high humidity, and you might want to look at your geotech report and find out, do you have any water wicking what's your water table? Is there a water table to worry about? And if not, do you have any radon gas issues? If you have radon gas, I don't do slab. I go with a stem wall. I get that sucker ventilated, and that radon gas is not going to come up to the home. There's a lot of factors to think about when it comes to slab versus stem wall. And also the different subcontractors. A lot of flat work subcontractors don't do walls. They don't have the forms for it. They just have the forms for the slab on grade. So, and some of them do them both. But in my neck of the woods, if you do a slab on grade, you do not do stem walls. You can't afford to carry 2 trailers with all that equipment. So ask around, study the geotech report, see what other people are doing in the area, look at your, if there's a water table issue. And if you have frost and if you have high humidity in the summer, the stem wall would be my option. But that tends to lift the house higher, and then you got steps. And then I don't like steps. So a lot of things to think about there.
John White.
Any experience with Zern PEX B piping with expansion fittings? Seems to have all the benefits of up-honor, yet smoother inside bore, no leaching. There's a lot of new technologies with the capacity for expansion. The whole array of PEX piping now can handle freezing and heat, and freezing and heat, and they can do those expansions. They don't handle boilers very well, and they don't handle heating as much. However, some do, but they're limited on their temperature, I think, with regard to that. Yeah, it's just the fittings in the couplers. I'm not a fan of PEX or shark bites. I've seen them fail, and that's just a temporary fixture or a temporary measure that a lot of service techs use in the industry. I like the crimp pitch, and there's two types. There's one that's got a ratchet system that actually has like a buckle on it that ratchets down. And if that's not stainless steel, and some of them are just steel, they can rust. But I like the full-on copper ones that pinch, because you know that copper is not going to have a problem over time. That copper will last a lot longer than the stainless steel, as far as I'm concerned. So it's all on the lasting quality that you want. Some things are great. They may go great for 10 years. They may go great for just 5. Some are going to hold off for 50 years or more. So I go for lasting quality on that.
D.B. Douglas.
You're a proponent of purchasing some heavy equipment. I'd love to purchase some, but maybe my fairly limited funds would be best spent on the building. It depends on the excavation requirements. Like I purchased some heavy equipment because I had a lot of jobs lined up, but I had one job in particular, which was a mountain job, and my excavation costs were coming in at $93,000. And this was one of my own personal family that I'm servicing, and I just couldn't see spending $93,000 on excavation. So we bought a Traco. Traco was $64,000. Even at the end of it, we've got equipment that we can sell back or use on other jobs, but I'm still a net savings, a serious net savings on that job. So if you have really, really big issues that you can handle with a small piece of equipment, then by all means, think about buying some equipment. But if the job really requires a big excavator and you're digging out a basement and you're going to try to do it with a small mini-X, it's not going to work. But the small mini-X could do a lot of other stuff. So something to think about. You weigh the cost and whatnot. And you have to know the right piece of equipment. And I'm more of a fan of a backhoe front loader combination, and I may end up trading all my stuff for just one piece of equipment. A backhoe can get down 8 feet. I can still trench, but I can also move a lot more dirt. My skid steer doesn't move near as much dirt as a nice backhoe, but it's pretty nice with clipping rocks, and I can just clip them and move them. So if you're at all the rocks everywhere, oh my goodness, you're going to be, that's another factor. So it's your soils and the natural environment are going to say a lot with regard to the equipment that you need. Okay, another question here. Angela says, hello from central Pennsylvania. Hello, Angela. Greg and Angela back again for more nuggets from the Kelches. I have a few questions for you this evening. My framer wants to use 5/8 TNG OSB for the roof sheeting. Is this a good idea? How do you allow for expansion? They don't butt them up. Well, the TNG, 5/8. Why does he want to use TNG? That's interesting. Ask him why. Now, if you're in, do you get hailstorms there? I know a lot of people are using thicker sheeting on the outside because of the hail, and it actually helps a little bit because it doesn't give and it doesn't receive as much damage as others. But I would go with the thicker, but not TNG. You don't need the tongue and groove. Tell them you're okay with the 5/8 because I like a thicker sheeting myself personally, but I don't need TNG on the roof. So tell him that there's no reason for the TNG on that one. And then you mentioned installing a 20-foot U for ground in the foundation wall. I'm reading that it's a bad idea. Concerns of integrity of concrete if there's an event. Can you explain why and ease concerns? It's a requirement by your local power utility company. They're going to require that. In fact, it's part of the inspection on most homes. I have not seen anywhere where they have not required a U for ground. Now, some areas have 2 grounds. Some of them want their grounds in the dirt. They don't want it into the foundation. Most want them right into the foundation because that's such a heavy rock structure concrete structure, and electricity is going to go right into that structure and right into the ground. So I don't see any blowbacks on that. I've never seen any damage because of electrical storms doing damage, and it's not going to weaken the concrete because it's already got rebar in it. So I don't see how that would weaken the concrete. Alex asks, if I purchase the first Sept's course, how do I update it to the self-managed course if that's what I am needing? At the very end of the first steps course, there's a coupon code. Hint, hint, for those who finish that course. Go to the very, very bottom of that, and it will give you a coupon code. It will give you a discount that's almost a little more than what you just paid for in the first steps course. So, but if you do purchase the self-managed course, it includes the first steps course, and keep that in mind. Okay. And can you give some guidance on how to file the intent to start construction? Is this through the permitting office? Would appreciate your suggestions. It depends on where you are in your state. Just go to your state, just in your search engine, type on construction registry or construction, and not just lien rights, construction lien rights, and filing, just something like that in your search engine, and it should pop up. Most states right now that I know of have a construction registry, and you go in there and you fill out a notice of commencement, a notice to start. It's all different with every state. And like in my state, if I file a notice of commencement within 20 days, it has to be within 20 days of my start date. As long as I did that, then my rights as a subcontractor are protected, meaning my lien rights are protected. Then I have 90 days to file a claim against the property where I can claim, I can lien the property if I need to secure my payment. So just research in your state, your construction registry. It's the keyword is liens or construction lien rights in your state, and say Pennsylvania, New York, California. Within just a few minutes, I can find just about any in any state, and it should come up first in the search engine. And just take it, and it should say something .gov. And if it doesn't say .gov at the end, you want to stay away from that. So
this one, you just missed that one.
Okay. Can you elaborate on the res check for installation? Yes. Your installation company should be able to give you a res check. Ask them if they'll do it. Mine does it for $75. He was doing it for free, but he found out that all the contractors were asking for that. And he goes, I'm giving this away. So now he charges for it. You don't want to try to do that for yourself, because you have to do all these weird calculations for low E windows, density of the installation product, the air capacity in the home, the cubic square feet. And when you do all these weird calculations, it punches out, yeah, I'll pass my res check. So architects can sometimes do it. If your insulator can't do it, you can also talk with your permitting office and ask them, do you know somebody who will do it? If you have to do a blower door test in your particular area, like I have to do in my area, my blower door test subcontractor, they'll do my res check as well. So you want to get someone to do that for you. There's no reason why it was a headache, and it will frustrate you. You don't need to go there.
Hype stonks.
Hey, Hypes. Welcome back, Hype Stonks. Lowe's surprisingly had the best price for impact windows here in Florida that I found. CGI brand, way cheaper than in the other windows companies in the area. I got a pro account and get VSP pricing. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Those I love the small guy as much as anyone, but I also want to build my home affordably. And you can use those box stores to your advantage. In fact, at the very end of it, if you're a little over budget, before you close, on the home, you can also get your appliances and stuff and get 12 months zero interest and stuff like that. You can get discounts, and you can get bonus points if you register as a builder, and you can get 3% back, right? And I've just a couple of months ago, I had $500 in what do you call them? Gift cards?
Mm-hmm.
Gift cards from Home Depot that I had, and I use those for myself. So study that stuff out. Study it out, and you'd be amazed at opportunities out there. Is it okay to use a skid steer to compact the dirt, or should they be using roller compaction?
You forgot the top part.
Oh.
When compacting.
Okay, when compacting, she said dirt. Okay, tell me they compact it. You can compact it with a skid steer. You just need to load that sucker up with soil. And if the soil is wet, that's going to add a lot more weight to the front of the skid steer. And fill it up as much as you can and roll it back and forth, and make sure that if it's really dry, there's somebody with a hose and they're going to wet that sucker down. You don't want it boggy like a mud bog. You want to avoid that, but you want it really nicely compacted. Now, I found that the skid steer can do maybe a 6-inch or 8-inch lift very, very well. I try not to do the full 1-inch lift. I'll do it a 6-inch, lift it, roll it, 6-inch, lift it, roll it. Then I'll have it come in and tested for compaction, because most of your geotech reports are going to ask for 1 foot compaction. And so once you get that 1 foot compaction, then you have them come and test it. And if it all passes good, you're good to go. But I've done it with a skid steer. They can do their compaction. It's nice to have heavier equipment and it gets it done faster. But if you're running a skid steer, you can do it with a skid steer. I just do it in smaller steps. So
I think we're at Daniel. He asked why flat, probably with the lot that we were talking. Yeah.
Because I can control the elevation to my standards. If I'm dealing with the slope, I'm dealing with depending upon the slope. If I never know what I'm dealing with. And if there's more slope, it's variable to each piece of land. But with a flat land, I don't have to worry, and I can bring either some dirt in. If it's a large piece of land, I just carve it so I slope it to the house. And that's easier than trying to deal with a nightmare that you're trying to solve. And you never know what that sloped nightmare is going to be. I build on mountains, and I'm dealing with just some terrible things sometimes. And there's just a lot of thinking that you have to do with the sloped hill.
Okay. He did say understood after the next one. So
okay.
We're down right here at Angela.
I say, do you have any interest in your self-managed students, projects, pictures? Yes.
Yes, we want them.
We want them, and we want videos. And
Yes.
I'm creating a little section on our home site. Please submit videos. And it could be 3 or 4 minutes on something you learned, a mistake you did. This is what I did. This is how I overcame it. This would be very, 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 very helpful for down the road, because I want more involvement. This channel is not just about me. It's about how to build your own home. It's how we all help each other, and we become a rising tide and we lift all ships. And I want this to be a lasting resource, so that when I'm gone and retired sometime and I'm not here anymore, it can self-perpetuate itself and it can function, and it could be a vital resource for a lot of people. We need to get back to the American experiment of doing things on our own, but we need help. We need to help each other to do that. So your videos, your posts, we're going to make that happen. So,
Linda Ritchie.
How do you feel about warm board in-floor heating? I'm in Colorado. Yeah, it's just it's a pricey thing. It's great. It's got continuous temperature throughout the entire home, evenly distributes that comfort throughout the home. That's a real plus. And you're in Colorado, and you're higher altitude, and you have to get that heat from the lowest point possible in the home. I'm in the desert. We want the cool temperatures to come from up high. In the colder climates, you want the temperatures to come from the low, because you're 9 to 10 months of the year, your main energy cost is heating the home, and you want that heat to come from the bottom. So if you can afford it and it worked great for you, by all means do it. But keep in mind, you're still going to have to find a way to cool the home. So you may end up facing with another forced air situation just to cool the home, unless you do some ductless systems in the home. If you're at a higher altitude, you may not need for cooling. You can gamble that. You can run in some condensate lines for mini splits in the home, but don't install them. Get your warm board in. That's the most costly thing. And then as the years progress, it has been hot the past summer. Let's go ahead and install one. It's all there ready to go. You don't have to dig out any wall structure to install that. So you can think in steps and phases. If you want the higher end thing here and you deal with the other cooling thing later if you wanted to. So just some thoughts. I did that on a home. I put mini splits one every year as I could afford it, and it worked out great.
John White.
Hi, John. I know you are in a dry climate and doubtlessly do a lot of traditional with coat stucco, but are you okay, Jeff's with rain screen, dimple mat behind it? Yes. Dimple mat's really, really good stuff. Rain screen, even all the plus. Anytime you have a cavity between your fascia material and the exterior substrate of the home, that cavity is a big, big, big plus because it's going to dry out the home. I remember a builder doing a video online, and he had masons put up a wall, okay? And it was a full grout cover, not dry stack. It was fully filled in with grout, and we're talking rock that was about 3 inches thick. It was natural rock, and they put it on the wall, and they had a rain screen behind that whole thing, and then they put a hose at it, all right, and they had a camera behind that rock, and you could see water coming through the rock within about a minute. And so it's porous rock and mortar. It's porous. So if that water gets behind that wall, you want it to go straight down. You do not want it to wick into the home, and it's going to go straight down, hit the J channel, and it's going to drain out away from the home. So need I say more? Rain screens in all the humid climates, Southwest, East Coast, you name it, coastal areas where there's a lot of rain, it's a big thing you want to deal with. And I really push for that. Let's see, where are we, sweetie?
John, Dwayne Snow.
I think
You went too high.
I went too high.
Dwayne Snow, right there.
Okay, what do you prefer, cellulose or fiberglass blown-in insulation for the attic in Canada? Very cold winters. The fiberglass. The cellulose is basically a paper product that's got some fire retardant on it. Said that kind of funny like. But in your climate, I'd actually be more favorable to a rock wool product. You know, you might want to think about that. But the blow-in fiberglass, if they can really get it nicely and compacted, it's not going to settle on you. Sometimes that cellulose has a tendency to settle, especially when they put it in wet. And I've seen a lot of subcontractors do that. There's a lot of products that used to be on the market, and some are still applying them, where they go in on the hose and they go in wet. When they dry, the top of the insulation inside that wall structure has shrunk, and it's like 2 inches where there's no insulation at the top of your plate. So if they can compact it really well and it's not going to shrink, then I would go with the fiberglass on that one.
John White.
Right here. 1 foot lifts are very dicey, especially with variation and compaction effort skill. 6 to 7 inch lifts takes away way much of the risk. Yeah, it does. All right. Here's a good example. You know those thumpers that city workers use, and then there's a vibrator plate. Those thumpers will reach down 3 to almost 4 inches of compaction. The vibrator plate is luckily if you get 2 to 3 inches of compaction. So there's some machines that will get a better compaction than other machines. And I've seen owner builders try to vibrate their footings to get them nice and compacted, but a thumper and making sure there's wet in the footings does a much better job. You look at concrete subcontractors, they're going to use a thumper for the footings, but they're going to use a vibrator plate for the grade, meaning your driveways and all that. They're just going to try to get it leveled out, but it's not really the compaction as much as the footings are needed. Footings is where you really need some really good compaction as well. So, Tony asks, hello, Keith, great content. How many is it?
It's both of those.
Okay, both of these. Do you normally phase out your client home builds to spread costs?
And then look at the next one.
You meet minimum standard for COA, but install basement, landscaping, and subsequent phases. Not install, but finish the basements. Sorry, yeah. Yes, I try to do that. I like to get out as quick as I can. I like to get things done. It depends on the build. If I've got a build that's a multi-million-dollar build, I want to take it all the way to the finish, and I'm in complete control. this is going to be on my portfolio and I want to control it. I've built homes that were so ugly, I didn't want them on my portfolio. I'm just building the home that a client asked me to build, and the clients were easy to work with, but it's not something that I would enjoy building. So I get in there and do it the best I can and let them do anything they want to do and be done. My main concern as a builder is that I did a really complicated build I finished a couple of months ago, and we built it right literally in the hillside, and it wasn't on the specs, but I put some drainage system on that entire home. I wanted to walk away with it feeling good, and so that was my concern. So I made a complete drainage system, tied all the gutters, the rain gutters, into that drainage system, and carried all that water away from that home, 45 feet away from that home. So it's not going to get any effect on that home. So I felt good. That's what I wanted to go after on that home. So when I left it, they needed to do landscaping and some miscellaneous things and stuff like that. And they wanted to do that. And that's fine. And it wasn't in the budget for me to do it. So phases are great. I just submitted a bid for a very complicated restoration project. And the family is looking at the numbers now, but it's just under $300,000 major restoration project of an old 100-year building. And I said, I know this is a pricey thing, but this is what has to happen in the home, but let's look at it in phases. So the family's now looking at it in phases. Let's just get the foundation done, get the framing structure redone, the porch, everything on the outside done, all new windows, all new roof, everything, but to leave the whole inside gutted, just leave it open bare like that. And then you can take it from there. But at least now your family's structure is protected. It's saved. It's not going to rot anymore. And so they're looking at that. And so sometimes you look at things like that, but that's a restoration, a remodel, and it's probably going to work good for them in phases, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Sloan, I just passed that up.
Yeah, right there.
Right there. Have good equity in our current home. How much would you take upon sale and use in the new home build? 50, 75%? Depends on how much equity you have. Do you have any answers for that one?
Yeah, there's lots of variables. What's the interest rate then if you're going to cover the other portion of it? Or are you downsizing to not have debt? What's your end goal? Do you want to have your home paid for? So there's a lot of variables to consider.
You can tell them what we did here on this house.
What do you mean?
We were almost paid off and we used the equity. You tell them.
We use the equity to buy a rental. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, go tell them.
So, yeah.
You're the smart one. You did that.
It depends on your comfort level, I would say. Some people I grew up trying to pay off your home. So in my mind, I would like to have my home paid off. But we also would like to have investment properties too. So we built our home, remodeled the front, put an addition on for a family. And then the interest rate was really low, giving away money right at 3%. So we took a loan because we're living in this home. So you get the lower interest rate. We took that and got that money to buy an investment property, which then we worked on and we paid that one off.
So there's no debt on that one, but the debt's on this home. So we just took out an equity line on this one to repair and remodel another home.
Yeah. So it's your comfort level. Are you comfortable at 50%? I have some other investors that they don't get another home until it's 50% paid off. But my mom, she's like, nope, I want that paid off before I get another one. Yeah. So it's your comfort level, how you feel, and the interest rate, what you're comfortable with the payment.
Yeah, and talk with a financial advisor because we are not financial advisors. But
there's lots of strategies. Yep, just
lots
how you
of strategies.
Feel comfortable.
Our daughter just did that. Our daughter's crazy.
Yeah. I did learn something today. I know we're over time, honey, but I learned something today about seller financing, and I just wanted you guys to be aware that if you're going to buy land on seller financing or anything, make sure it is paid off. that the seller has that land paid off if you choose to do seller financing, because the banks are actually, for years and years, we could do seller financing and the banks would not come after it, because there's a clause in a loan that if you do seller financing, they could call your note due. And that's what they're doing. I've been in a conference this week and the banks are doing it because here's their situation is that they have all these loans out for 3.5%. And so people that own homes and property, they're like, hey, we got this at a cheap rate. I'll sell it to somebody else at the 7%, make that 3%, and all is great, right? We've got some people buying the property, but the banks aren't going to do that. They're not, they will pull that clause due on sale and they will foreclose, or, well, what they'll do is they'll say you have 30 days to pay back the loan. Mm-hmm. And so don't do seller financing unless it's paid off. The seller has that paid off, because then they're like the bank. There's a whole bunch going into it, but I just wanted to give you a heads up about that.
Okay, let's finish off with these last few questions. I don't know if we'll get to all of them here. I think it was Sloan.
Yeah, we just finished.
Let's see. Costco has vinyl plank, 10 millimeter plus 2 millimeter pad. Do you or anybody on the call have experience with that? It is close to a 1/2 inch thick. If it's thick, I like it. If it's not thick, I don't like it. And then I look at the testimonials of that product online. That's going to help me out quite a bit. Depends on the cost per square foot. And if it's, $3 or $4, doesn't seem to be too bad. But if it's higher than that, I can go with much better products than that for that price. But I don't like to go really too cheap on flooring. I don't like to be very, very, very expensive. I like to get the, good quality that's going to last. Another question, we're going to end with these last questions here. Dwayne asks, so we are selecting our flooring for our new build. What do you recommend? LVP, laminate, engineered hardwood. We plan to use tile for the foyer and ensuite so we can put in floor heating in these areas. Check out stellarinnovations.com. stellarinnovations.com. It's a floating floor, fully 3/4 inch solid wood. It's the best flooring I've found on the market, and it's solid wood. If you can't afford that, then I go with a higher grade luxury vinyl, and the Home Light product at Home Depot is phenomenal. It's actually in this home. It lasts and it doesn't take any beating or anything like that. Just don't go with a really thin. That's the thickest luxury vinyl I've found on the market is the Home Safe or Home Light. Safe Light, something like that. It's something light at Home Depot. Check it out. And they'll give you some samples. You can check them out. Goes in great. It's very solid and it wears well. But I'm not a fan of engineered wood. And I don't like glue down woods because when there's a leak, and there's going to be a leak, it's going to destroy the floor. I don't go there. I could talk forever on that. That gives you some feedback.
This one, owner builder get liability insurance.
Well, where can owner builder get liability insurance? Just go, if you're in the self-managed package, go to the download section, and there's a file for services for architects, engineers, etc. Download that file. On the bottom of that page is an insurance agent. I recommend, and he can service the entire United States. And to use 4-inch or 6-inch slabs. If 4-inch and mesh, how do you ensure mesh stays in the middle of the slab? With a chair. It's a little plastic chair that they put underneath the rebar, and you can get chairs that are 1.5 inches, 2 inches high, 3 inches high. You can actually get that plastic chair to the right height you need, and all the rebar is going to sit right on top of that. However, just about every contractor I know, they don't like them because as they're backing out and pouring the concrete, they trip over them. So most subcontractors will lift that rebar as they're moving forward. Now that's not that great either, but they do it. But the problem is that rebar is kind of wavy inside the concrete. So I ask my guys, and I bring them some hot chocolate, please leave the chairs there. I know you may trip over them, but just leave the chairs there. That way I have the continuity of the rebar inside the slab. But you can get them to the right height you need. Just go to a concrete supply company and they'll help you out with that. I was advised that it may be best to use a GC so they can be responsible for liabilities for individual subs or other issues that may arise. Some state laws help to make GCs responsible. Not many, and most GCs are not going to be responsible. They're going to defer that onto the subcontractor. Every subcontractor I hire is now liable for that work. Okay, I'm liable for hiring that subcontractor. My insurance on liability will kick in if theirs does not kick in. That's why mine's in place. But I make sure they have their liability. And in the description of work and labor, I make sure that they build or do things per plan, and they're liable to build according to the engineered plans. So you're not completely. I mean, the GC's not completely free, but they're also carrying a huge load, but they're just flicking it off onto subcontractors. Keep in mind that a GC is a general contractor. Okay, they are engaging in contract. They're finding a bid, looking at the bid, making sure they have insurance, and then they hire that person. That's about all they're pretty much doing, and then they're looking for quality and et cetera on that. But we call them general contractors for a reason, because they're engaging in contract.
Oh, he had a second part.
If we have an issue with the build, we have just the GC to push to make it right. Yeah. Whereas self-build, you have to chase multiple subs. Not true, okay? I had a carpenter, just a finished carpenter, and he hit a leak in a PVC pipe, and it didn't show up for 4 months, okay? And I make sure all my guys are good on their warranties for a full year, all right? It's part of the agreement I have. Well, the leak occurred on a glue-down wood floor, of all places, destroyed the floor, had it fixed. It was $3,800. I called his insurance agent to let his insurance agent know that I'm going to file a claim with this client. The insurance agent called the sub, and I called him too. And then the sub ended up saying, I didn't want to pay this. This is not mine. Yeah. And I had a picture of it, documented it, all that. And he ended up paying it out of his own pocket because he didn't want his insurance to get jacked up. So get their insurance before you even give them a check. Because if you don't have that and you do have a problem, you have no recourse other than their trust and verification of their word. But with that insurance in there, you're
But I think what
protected.
Sloan is trying to say is that you did all that. The homeowner didn't have to.
Right. Now, if you don't want that headache and
get a GC.
Then get a GC. But you have to assume that GC is doing all that proper paperwork behind the scenes. Like my daughter, I was going to have her do a chat with me. I'm trying to get her to do a chat. She does all my bookkeeping and checks for all verification of employment, checks all the verifications for liability and all that. So we have it all before we even submit. And even with a lot of the banks that I work with, they will do the same thing. They will ask for that before they even release a check. I just got a couple more questions here, and then we got to go. I got a meeting with a client.
Okay. How many homes have you built?
Over 100 homes so far in my lifetime. Over 100.
He worked with a nonprofit and built subdivisions.
Yeah.
And he helped families build homes. He taught them. So a lot of homes.
Question max distance would you put septic drainage fields from a house? If I understand correctly, the septic tank needs to be close to the house, of course, with the clean out. Clean out, yes, not the drain fields. Your geotech is going to design that for you. You're not going to design that. And then they're going to submit that most likely to a health department. Then the health department is going to approve it. And then it can't be too far because it has to have the proper slope for the plumber. So all that's decided, factored, and all the formulas are done by a geotech engineer. So you're not going to have a say in that. You have to put it where they tell you have to put it. However, someday I'll tell you some stories and how I got around that. Do you ever give advice during a custom build or just build what the blueprint says? Just curious. I give tons of advice. That's my Achilles heels. I'm constantly giving new solutions, solving problems, giving ideas, and it's kind of a headache.
And a good framer will do it too. Like we've had some really good framers like, oh, if we just do this, you can use this space. So yeah.
And question, do you ever run your HVAC heat pump refrigerant lines from the attic inside the interior wall rather than run these ugly lines down the height of the exterior wall. I run them inside, and if I do a 2x6 wall and I've got a nice heel height, a nice access on the top of the wall, I'll run them down through that and punch them out through that way. However, on my house, I built a chase where I ran 6 condensate lines, and then I covered that chase with a nice decorative thing so nobody would know. It looks like a chimney. So if you want to make it look like a chimney and they won't know it's a chase, then you can do that too. It's how you kind of creatively tackle that and take it on. We're being conservative and banking on 7 to 8% rates. Safe number would be 100K of equity available. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good start.
That's
you can
really good.
get your excavation done and probably your lumber package and maybe your framing. You know, it depends on how big the home is. Smile. Thanks for clarification on liabilities for GC versus subs. Jessica, thank you very much. Everyone, appreciate it. Thanks for us for your advice. You guys are welcome. We'll do this again every Thursday. Make sure you like, subscribe, share the channel, and save your pictures, save your videos. I'm hoping to get that all done on the website, and we'll be here next week, give you some more market updates. And you guys take care. It's been great. I've got to run to a client. They're waiting for me right now. So you guys take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.